Good morning.
Good
Welcome to
morning.
welcome to Two Pastors on a Park Bench. I'm Reverend Diane from Norfolk, New York.
And I'm Reverend Peggy from Lower Haynesville, Canada.
So glad you could join with us. So glad you're here, Peggy.
I'm so glad you're here. I love our new platform and Two Pastors on a Park Bench. I am really enjoying this.
I am too. I actually gave out one of the stickers yesterday to somebody, and they put it on their phone right in front of me.
We have stickers.
You.
We are up in the we even have mugs too, which I'm not using right now, but anyway. I have a question for you. We're in our sermon series, Game Changer, and this week we are looking at, guess what? A game. But before we do that, I have a couple of questions for you. Have you, Pastor Diane, have you ever thought about why you're doing what you're doing? You're a pastor at a small church with a small congregation, much like myself. Have you ever thought about why we're doing what we're doing, or where we fit into God's picture? Has that ever crossed your mind?
Maybe the second part, but rarely the first part.
Really, the first part, yeah. Well, I've been at a couple of small churches now and love both of them so much. But I think I struggle with knowing where I fit in, like what impact will I, even when I was just, not a pastor, but just a regular, ordinary Christian, um, what do I have to offer is sort of what I've thought about.
Right.
And it can become overwhelming. But there's something that I like to do. I like to put together puzzles. And sometimes when taking that puzzle out of the box at the beginning and you have like 1,000 or 1,500 pieces and you have to turn them all over and sort them all out, especially if the puzzle is very similar. I did one when I was in Newfoundland, and it took me weeks and I worked on it because there was a whole field and it was just grass and yellow flowers. The mountains I got done in a couple hours, but the grass and the flowers, I was like there for weeks trying to get it all together and trying to get one piece in after another, after another, after another. And each one fit, each one played a very small part, but they all came together to make this beautiful picture. And Scrabble is sometimes like that, like the game, because this week we're looking at the game Scrabble. I love Scrabble. I was down at the gathering and I was watching this. This is sort of where this sermon series actually was sort of gestated, I guess. Was down there listening to some things and seeing some things about games. And there was these people sitting around, they were playing Scrabble, and I was happened to be sitting down watching them. And one person was using small little words while the other person had some fairly longer words. And you think that the big words would, you know, win the game, right? But they were using words, the person using the smaller words were using words like, well, letters like X, and they added it to an O that the other person had already put there in a
XO.
triple ox.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, ox. Or they were adding onto a word that was already there. For example, now I can't remember the words that they were using, but if you had the word lush, they put a B on it and it became blush. And guess who won the game?
The person that had the big words?
No, the person with the words. That was so cool. I loved it. And I started thinking, isn't life like that? It's a series of small things. Sometimes we don't know how they all are going to fit together, like taking the puzzle out of the box. We don't know how they're all going to fit together, but we have to work at it. And we have to, you know, work at it and put these things together and find the right spots and use the gifts and talents that we're given. But sometimes we don't see the bigger picture until either much later or if ever.
Yeah.
And I,
So
I
it's kind of like compound interest.
yeah,
You put some money in an account and you think, well, that's not a lot of money, but over time you earn interest and that interest is compounded. So you're not just earning interest on the initial investment, but on the investment plus the interest, and then the investment plus the interest plus the interest, and so on and so forth. And by the time you retire, you have enough money to live on.
yeah. And last week we talked about Monopoly and John Wesley's um saying, earn all you can, save all you can in compound interest, and give all you can, because if you're earning interest on your interest on your interest on your interest, boom, you got lots to give. And
Yep.
this also reminds me of a story that I heard years ago, and it was about 57 cents. This little girl, and I did look it up, and it says it's a true story. Her name was Hattie Mae Wyatt, and it was in the late 1800s, probably 1882 or somewhere around there. This little girl used to go down the street. She was from a very poor family, and she used to attend Sunday school, but the Sunday school was extremely crowded. And what Hattie started to do is she started to save her pennies. Sometimes she wouldn't be able to get into Sunday school when she arrived because it was too crowded. And she thought, if I could save enough money, we could build a new Sunday school where all of the children could go to. Unfortunately, Hattie got sick and she passed away. And when the reverend showed up to do her funeral, Hattie's mom passed him a little purse. And in the little purse was a note and 57 cents. And it was Hattie's savings for a new Sunday school. Well, that pastor took the money back to his church. He auctioned off the 57 cents, raised $250, which was a lot of money in the 1880s, and purchased a new house down the street that they were able to house a new Sunday school in, where everybody could come. And that went on to become, what was the name of it? Uh, Temple University Hospital. And so there's a story there, but it went on how 57 cents, and had he never ever seen what her money, what she was saving, how her money was used. And sometimes we don't get to see what our gifts and our talents might produce when we do small things.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, winning at times doesn't take the big moves, but small, consistent play, being faithful. It's almost like the tortoise and the hare story. And here's the funny thing. I saw a video 3 or 4 years ago, maybe, and it was actually a rabbit and a turtle, not the fable, but real life. And they
Oh,
were in this race. And the rabbit, would stop and sniff here and there and everywhere, and he was all over the place. And it was the turtle that actually won in real life. Isn't that
oh,
amazing? Because of those small, consistent, keeping your eye on the prize, so to
yep.
speak. And in a way, that's what we need to do. When you want to win at Scrabble, there's three things we want to share with you. And the first thing is that the small things, the small words, are just as important as the big words. Peggy talked about this Scrabble game that she watched down in Florida, where it was just small, consistent things. But in the long run, it it worked. It worked for
Words.
that person. Um, and I'm kind of reminded of of what Jesus said when he was talking about the sheep and the goats. And let me read this for you. Matthew 25, verses 34 and on. Then the king shall say to those on his right. So he had the sheep on his right, the goats on his left. He said to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." And the righteous will answer him, "When did we do that?" That's the official
Paraphrasing, but not
Diane
by
version.
much.
"When did we do that, Lord?" And the king will reply, "I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." And to me, that's praise for the little things. Like, it doesn't take a lot to offer somebody who's thirsty a glass of water. It doesn't take a lot to invite a stranger. Well, for some people it does take a lot to invite a stranger in, but it's not a big thing. It's not like hosting a big huge televised crusade like Billy Graham.
Right. But
It's the little things.
it's the small things that matter. It's the small words that we speak to one another. It's the small words that, I have a personal story of a time where I felt broken and somebody said something to me that has stayed with me for 13 years. I still remember the expression on their face. I still remember the words that they spoke. But if I were to go back, and it was just a quick little phrase, if I were to go back and say to them, "Thank you for saying those words," they'd probably look at me and go, "I have no recollection of that." But for me, it was such a profound moment that you have no idea what your words, and we are talking about Scrabble and we are talking about words here, but you have no idea how those little things that you say, those little things that you do will impact somebody long term.
Yeah, for sure. So it's important to remember that small words can be just as important, and small deeds done consistently, obediently to God,
Cleaning
are
toilets at the church.
yes, for sure. Mowing the lawn, looking after the flowers,
Yeah.
getting the
All
coffee
has to
ready.
be done. It all has to be done.
Yep, yep,
And those small things faithfully are things that go sometimes unnoticed, but not unnoticed by the King of Kings.
right.
Yeah.
And I'd love, if you're watching this, write in the comments, what small thing can you do
Oh, I
that
love
might
that.
make a big impact?
Ah,
Yeah,
that is good. That is good
right.
stuff. And now the second point is well, we said the first point is small words can win the game, right? And then the second point is the careful placement of the words, the strategic um, placement of key letters or keyword, letters on triple and double word scores. And this sort of reminds me of the sower and the seed parable that we have in the Bible.
Yeah,
Maybe you
Jesus
can
told
elaborate
parables.
on that. Yeah, this is a parable. This is the parable of parables.
Well, if you don't know the parable, let me just remind you. It's from Matthew 13, and Matthew writes, "That same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat by the lake. Such large crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat in it." Well, All the people stood on the shore. Then he told them many things in parables, saying, a farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly, but the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among thorns, which grew up and choked out the plants. And still other seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop 160 or 30 times what was sown. Whoever has ears, let them hear.
Mm, I love that. When Jesus came and started his ministry at the age of 30,
Yeah.
I wonder how his ministry would have been different if he had been able to preach to the king, the Caesar, Pontius Pilate, the wealthy, the rich. Yet his
He
ministry,
didn't.
yeah, he didn't. It went to the woman with the issue of blood. It went to the Samaritan at the well. It went to the adulterers. It went to Legion in the cemetery with the demons.
It went
Like,
to the tax collectors that he partied with.
uh-huh. It goes, why? Why? And I think it goes back to the parable here. The soil was rich in these
Yes,
places. It wasn't crowded out by the thought of money and power or any of those kinds of things. It was rich soil. He knew where to sow the seeds that needed to be reaped eventually and harvested eventually. And I love the story of the woman at the well and how he told her that he was the living water, and what was her immediate response was to go out and to tell others about who she had met.
yeah,
And that to me, rich fertile soil.
yeah, for sure. And that's what we're saying is the careful placement of words and the word of God. When we go out and sow, you know, I'm not saying that you ignore certain parts, but you put your energy towards planting where the soil is fertile, where you know that it has a chance to grow and to produce.
Yeah.
And if we're going to, make this parable out of the game of Scrabble, knowing where those triple word score places are and the triple letter and what letter goes where and it's all important.
I mean, you have to start on that little star, I believe. So do you put your first letter on the star? Do you put your middle letter in the star? Or do you put your end letter on the star? Like that's, or do you go up and down? Do you go straight across? Like, what do you do? But
It's
it's
all
this,
in the
it's
strategy.
all in the strategy. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, so we know that little words can win the game, little deeds can win the game. We know that careful placement of the words is very important so that you get as many score points as you can. But finally, here's something, um, and this was something that Peggy had alluded to as well. Using hook letters and suffixes and prefixes. I have a hard time with certain words, and maybe if I had have said the prefixes and suffixes, yeah, that works well.
That works better.
Having things out of order in my mind just doesn't work. Um, what I mean by the hook letters is what Peggy had said, like turning a word like lush by using a letter B to blush, and adding un to a word to make another word because what you're doing is you're building on somebody else's work. And
And
think about that in the Christian life.
that's what it's all about. Like when I mean, you were here, you were in Lower Haynesville at one point. And what I love is you go into this church who that's 134 years old next, or maybe 135 years old next August. And to see all of those people that have come before, some of them long gone,
Hmm.
who have laid a foundation. But in that, like I was thinking about this the other day. People have come, people have tilled the soil, people have done really good work. But every year when you plant a garden, you need to till the soil again, right?
Yep.
So it's a continuous effort. And when you're using these hook letters and hook words and putting on these prefixes and suffixes, it's contagious. It's contagious.
I'm
Ah!
sorry.
But what you're doing is you're building on somebody else's work, and that is a part of Christian life. And
Yep.
Paul does a beautiful job of explaining this in First Corinthians.
Yeah. First Corinthians chapter 3. He starts out sort of giving a little bit of a warning. We're going to look at starting at verse 5. What after all is Apollos? And what is Paul? And just before this, he says, some of you follow Apollos, and some of you follow Paul, and I tell you, don't be doing that. After all, what is? Only servants through whom you came to believe, as the Lord has assigned to each his task. I planted the seed, Apollos watered it, but God has been making it grow. So neither the one who plants nor the one who waters is anything, but only God who makes things grow. The one who plants and the one who waters have one purpose, and they will each be rewarded according to their own labor. For we are co workers in God's service. You are God's field, God's building.
I
And
remember,
oh,
oh, go ahead.
he's saying here, we all have a part to play. And I wonder, he said, I planted and Apollos watered, but if Paul hadn't have planted, what good would Apollos watering have done? We
It
need
would
to
have
build
not
on.
any good at all. And
None
then
at all.
if I planted some seeds and I watered them too much, and guess what? They didn't grow. I
I've never had that. Let me try that again. I've never, forget it.
but I mean, you can water them too much, you don't water them enough. Like it's all about partnership. I remember being at Kingswood, and I was having a conversation with Dr. Smith one day, and he said to me, like these small little conversations that I've had over the years, he said, there's no Christian who is a lone Christian. We cannot do this on our own. It takes partnership with one person, building on another, and encouraging one another instead of tearing each other down.
Yeah.
Okay?
And if we continue on reading what Paul wrote, verse 10, by the grace God has given me, I laid a foundation as a wise builder, and someone else is building on it. But each one should build with care. Look after the work you have to do. For no one can lay a foundation other than the one already laid, which is Jesus Christ. If anyone builds on this foundation using gold, silver, costly stones, wood, hay, or straw, their work will be shown for what it is, because the day will bring it to light. It will be revealed with fire, and the fire will test the quality of each person's work. If what has been built survives, the builder will receive a reward. If it is burned up, the builder will suffer loss, but yet will be saved, even though only as one escaping through the flames.
Mm.
The
I
imp-
um
oh,
I,
go
I
ahead.
love I love this idea of us being co-workers.
Yeah.
We are co-writers, cohorts.
But even if we weren't doing this sermon series, we are co-workers.
Yeah, we are.
And um, so much about this sermon is reminding me of a meeting that I had this week with Dr. Eastlack, the district superintendent here in the Northeast District. And he was sharing about this book that he read, talking about, I'm going to call it game theory, but that might not be the quite the right term. And what kind of a game are we playing? Are we playing a finite game where there's a beginning, a middle, and end? And we are playing to win, or are we playing an infinite game where we have a part in the game, but it started before us and it'll go on beyond us? And that's what this is talking about, you know, building on what other people have started
Yeah.
and leaving a legacy for others to work on.
Mm. So in saying all of this, I think that the real point in these 3 points that we have here is that when we do something, whether it's big or small, we have to have 3 things in mind. And I think this will sort of sum it up a lot. We have to do it with big love. When
Mhm.
we're down on our knees scrubbing a toilet, right? Or doing those small things that God requires us to do, whether we're in a small church or in a small place, or it's a small glass of water to somebody, we do it with big love.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, I'm just on this high because of something that just happened. So small
Tell
thing
us about
like
it. Tell us
um,
about it, because it's important.
it is. A couple of days ago, I was at the Dollar Tree and they had little boxes of sidewalk chalk, and Dollar Tree, everything's $1.25. So I picked one up thinking, hey, we have nice new front sidewalks and sidewalks along the side. They're bright, they're white, perfect canvas for sidewalk chalk, right?
Yep.
So I put some out there, and not a lot's happened the last couple of days, but this morning I was out watering the flowers and somebody went by with a little girl, probably about 5 years old. And I said, hey, there's some sidewalk chalk if you wanna do something. They actually came back and she started drawing. And I went out and I was engaging with them, talking and blah, blah, blah. And they went along and I got their permission to put a picture on Facebook. And just a few minutes ago, the girl came back with the two adults that were with her, and she had written me a letter saying thank you and gave me a hug, and they took a picture with me. And it's like, it's little things, $1.25 for a box of sidewalk chalk could have a big impact in somebody's life. Who would have
And
thought?
we actually stopped recording after point 3 because the doorbell rang and she had to go get it.
You
And
probably heard the doorbell ring.
and and to back up just a little bit, when I was down there and we started Two Pastors on a Park Bench, we went out to the store, picked up a park bench, and put it in front of the church so
Yeah.
that people are invited to come along and sit and have conversation. We actually have a picnic table here and we have it out in front of the church.
Uh-huh.
But my suggestion last week was to bring the picnic table down to my property, which is just probably 200 meters away. I don't know how many feet that is. Look it up, translate it into American. And
200 yards.
200 yards, 200 meters away, and put it on my front lawn. So if I see somebody going by, I can actually go out and engage with them here on my front lawn, because your church's front lawn is your front lawn too, because you live in the church.
I do. Great in the winter.
Great in the winter, yeah. But
But
again,
here's the thing. Um, I bought that chalk with this idea of great love, big love for this community.
Big love.
giving the kids something to do, beautifying, giving a creative outlet. Oh,
And I'll give you two other things that you did that with. You did it with big passion and you did it with big expectations.
well, here's the thing. I don't think I had big expectations. I did not expect to get a letter.
No, you didn't. But God,
But God,
He can take things that we do as small, and because we are faithful and because we have big love, He can move mountains like a small mustard seed. If you have the faith of a mustard seed, now I'm getting preach here. If you have faith like a mustard seed, you can move a mountain. Like,
mm-hmm.
but that's not from me. That's not my expectation. That's God's expectation.
Yeah.
God can do anything bigger and better than we can ever imagine. Ah,
But we do need to have
big love.
expectation that when we do stuff, when we are obedient to God, when we are prayerful about what we're doing, that God is going to move.
We have big love, we have big passion, we
And
follow through with what we are called to do, even in those little things.
yeah,
And we leave it in God's hand. We may see the effects like the compound interest, or we may never see what will happen, like the story of Hattie Mae at the beginning.
yeah,
But God is infinite. God is outside of our time, and He makes things happen in His time. And
yeah,
we have to be faithful with what we have right here, right now, and stay true to those little things.
yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, I am so glad that you joined with us. This sermon has really pumped me up, and not just the sermon, but the other things going on today too. And I am so excited to see what God is going to be doing. But here's the thing, wherever you find yourself this week,
Find a way to be a game changer.
thanks so much. We will talk to you next week.
From two pastors on a park bench, I'm Reverend Peggy.
And I'm Reverend Diane. Bye.
Bye.